Charlie Jones here with Ebenezer Woodworking. Today I wanted to show how to do dovetails on the router table with the Keller jig. Now I used to do a lot of hand cut dovetails, and I can still do that, but they're very time consuming. So if you want something to look great and don't have a lot of time, the Keller is the way to go. It's probably the simplest one out there. I know Woodcraft has one now that's very similar, and that one probably work fine too, but it's a very simple machine, and let's take a look at it. All right, I think we're ready now. So what we have here is a 41 inch, little over 41 inch long board. One thing's important when you're doing this is to make sure your board, however wide it is flat, because if it's got a bow in it, it might change things a bit. I've set it up to where my first tail will start inboard to leave room for the pins, half a pin approximately on the other side. You can do this however you want it. And I am going to skip 1, 2, 3. I'm going to skip the fourth pin from the end, just to give it a little more of a decorative look. So I'm going to get the dust collecting started here, and we'll get going. There we are. Now you're going to find out what's important about this line. What we're going to do, in order to have the same orientation, we're going to flip this board in and put it back against that line, which will put it in the same place as the original. Okay, I'm going to take a moment to mark my bottom as I did the top to make sure they're exactly the same, and then we'll start again. So there we go. What's really nice about doing it like this rather than the handheld router is you notice there's not a lot of chips or dust here that collector gets most of this. So next we're going to go to cutting the pins. See, we've cut tails on both of our pieces, our sides. Now we're going to cut the pins. So what you need to do is get something. I'm just using a little trash can and a board there to get it up level to make it a little easier. You want to get your boards lined up exactly. The tail board laying on top of the pin board, and you want to take I use a mechanical pencil with a pretty sharp tip, but you want to get in there and mark just on the sides. You can't reach all the way to the back, but that's okay. And you only need to actually mark one. I like to mark 2 or 3 just because it might be a little more accurate. I doubt if it matters. But once you've done that, you want to see what it looks like. You can see I've changed the router bit. One little safety tip is I always unplug my router, which I've got this outlet built into the table. I always unplug it when I'm changing the bits or doing anything like that. So just something to consider. You want to keep your hands and fingers and things like that. Take your jig. This is the side we used for the tails, spinning her around. Now the aluminum versions of this that are a little more expensive have 2 separate jigs rather than one, but I find this pretty easy to use. I'm going to grab a clamp. And you want to get this finger set between those marks I made. It's actually easier than it looks. And get your clamp on it. That's probably the most awkward thing. Be better off if you had your clamps attached to the jig, and I may do that at some point. I don't do many of these. Okay, I'm going to check this again. Okay, that looks good. Cotton up our clamps. Now we're going to take the whole assembly over to the router table. You'll need your hearing protection now. Just cut. Sitting on the router table, I've changed the bit to a straight bit that comes with the set here, and this will be guided in the fingers. I'm going to turn the dust collector on and we'll get started. Now, one thing different, since I have skipped around a little, since I've left spaces just for decoration with the tails, I'm going to be cutting all the pins, and then I'll come back with a saw and cut the pins out that I don't need. pay attention to all the steps. It's a whole lot easier to use than some of the other jigs that have multiple settings on them. Everything's just kind of straightforward. Thank you for listening, and you can subscribe. Thank you.